it's time for us to bring you the news review, and we're joined via Zoom by the Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa, Sulemana Brahima. Good morning to you, sir, and thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Great. I have the Daily Graphic newspaper, I have the Daily Guide, I have the Ghanaian Publisher, the Finder, the Custodian, and the Energy Digest. Okay, so those are the papers we have. Anyway, Mr. Brahima, but I don't know whether over the weekend you got some issues that you wanted to, if given the opportunity, you talk about before we delve into the papers.
Well, not much. Throughout the week, I was in Nigeria, where we had conversations about the shrinking civic space in our region, the political crisis that we are going through, the insecurity, the issues of good governance and all. And in the course of the process, we heard of the coup in Gabon. And I think it really, we are at a point where we really have to reflect on the causes of these coups d'etats and the issues of good governance in our region. I don't think that at this stage any country is immune to these recurring coups d'etats. We all have to be careful. I made the point that what is important is for governments to appreciate the fact that the trouble causers are not the ones who are warning that there could be a coup d'etat. But indeed, the issue is how our governments are leading us. And I think that as citizens of West Africa, we should all be worried about these developments and begin to engage our governments in ways that would prevent any possible coup d'etat in our respective countries. I just wanted to reflect on that as we go along.
All right, grateful. Now, on the front page of the Daily Graphic newspaper, it says probe committee to invite IGP for questioning. Smallholder farmers benefit from $69.7 million project. Expect more rains up to November, according to that GMET warns. Labour Commission direct CTAG to end strike, and Eric Yamuche inducted Pentecost chairman. Okay, so the Ghana Meteorological Agency, GMET, has cautioned that the distribution of this year's September-November rainfall may lead to more localized floods in low-lying areas within Accra and Kumasi. It said there was also a high chance of heavy flood in the northern part of the country due to the quantum of the rainfall expected in those areas and the likelihood of the spillage of the Bagre Dam in Burkina Faso. This was contained in this year's September, October, November forecast made available to the Daily Graphic. Now, the Deputy Director and Head of Research and Applied Meteorology and at GMET, Francisca Marti, said the current rainfall pattern as captured in the forecast was not out of the ordinary. Well, year in, year out, we go through, this cycle of when it rains, we have floods here and there. What do you think has been the reason why we've not really been able to deal with, the aftermath of rainfall in this country?
Well, I think it comes down to a number of factors. One is indiscipline in the part of we the citizens, non-compliance of the rules governing our physical spaces. Everyone is building anywhere, and the authorities appear not to care. Apart from that, what governments must also do over the years in terms of maintaining our drains, constructing our new ones and all, are not also being done. We have a minister for sanitation who is into this whole controversy about monies, and people are asking, where is this money coming from? We've heard about regime contracts here and there. So it's, for me, the combination of these factors that continue to give us all these problems over the years. We know that these things will happen. We know the rainy season is coming, but we only get to talk about the challenges. People are, flooding in this area, this number of houses demolished, or, collapsed as a result of flooding, one person dead, two people dead. And then we do the stories, then wait to follow what happens the following year. I think it's all about leadership. Our metropolitan, municipal chief executives and the role they have to play, the regional coordinating councils and the role they have to play, and at the national level, the role of the entire government machinery. And even if talking about discipline, yes, people have to be self-disciplined, but we know that it is because people will not do the right things all the time. That is why we have the police, for example. And law enforcement is critical. And until we do that as a nation, I think we will basically be reduced to this year in, year out complaints and lamentations, and we will forever be in this situation, unfortunately.
I mean, back in school, I learned something called rainwater harvesting technology. So it means that our universities even know how to harvest rainfall, for agricultural purposes. But we have not been able to, actualize it. So we only learn it in school, and that's it. That's where it stays. Every year it rains, and then the water runs off. And then we'll get into the dry season, we're complaining we don't have water. So what really is it? Is it about funding, or it's about us always procrastinating what ought to be done?
Well, I guess it's a matter of policy and a matter of putting policies into practice. So it's two things here. One is the issue of water shortage during the dry season, and the important issue about harvesting water. And so that relates to questions about water shortage and Ghana Water Company not being able to supply to meet the demands of people. But at this stage, I think GMET's concern is really about the flooding situation. And that, I believe, has really perhaps nothing or little to do with the capacity of people to harvest water. No matter the capacities that we have in terms of harvesting water, the floods will happen. So long as the drains are choked, and in some places there are no drains, and people are constructing in low-lying areas, and people are filling places that are supposed to be the areas that should contain flood waters, people are building there, just filling them up and building there, then we'll continue to have the problem that we have on hand. This Bagre Dam spillage, it's been constantly every year is done. And you cannot blame the Burkinabés. If the time comes and that is what they have to do in order to be able to survive and get their communities to thrive, they have to do that. It is up to us to also then prepare and be resilient in terms of containing the spilled water, which has all the problem. So as a country, we have a lot to do.
All right, let's see how that goes. Now, when you go to page 13 of the Daily Graphic, it says probe committee to invite IGP for questioning. The parliamentary committee probing the purported plot to oust the Inspector General of Police, Dr. George Akufo-Dampare, from office, has hinted that it could invite Dr. Dampare to respond to certain questions and concerns raised by the witnesses. Speaking to the press after last Friday's hearing, the chairman of the committee, Samuel Atacha, said that was informed by the way evidence was evolving and unfolding. Quote, "This is because of the fact that what we should place before the plenary should not be shoddy and one-sided. If the presence of the individual will give the relevance to the fact-finding exercise, we will do that," he said. He, however, stopped short of disclosing the specific day the committee would invite the IGP. And I'm sure you followed, the proceedings. How has it really met your expectations?
Well, it's good, first of all, to have the parliamentary inquiry into this, important issue about, it's for me, not really about the IGP, but about the security and stability of our country. We are talking about coup d'etats elsewhere. And when there is lawlessness, and when governments are misbehaving, as we see around our region, that's where these things, even become much more plausible and possible. We have had a situation where some people have basically orchestrated to oust the IGP, and the reasons they are giving on the tape, really. It's not about the IGP being incompetent, the IGP, the way he behaves, resulting in a lot of crime and all of that. We are talking about somebody who basically is saying this IGP must go out because with him, his party cannot win an election. And this is a 7 police commissioner. And of course, coincidentally, we saw what this commissioner presided over during the Ayawaso West Wogon by elections. So, for example, when he says that elections has mafia, we know what he means. So, I think it's important that we are all getting to hear from the orchestrator of this whole agenda. I agree with the committee's sentiment sometimes that, well, given the benefit of the doubt, perhaps it should have been an inquiry held in camera rather than, being done publicly as we have it now.
Okay.
Because indeed, there have been some developments that maybe would have been better not to be put out in the public. But quite clearly, you see a man who is so bitter, a man perhaps who has, as a result of not being able to get his ambitions to become the IGP, is certainly quite bitter. If it comes down to inviting the IGP, well, one cannot say no, but I wonder whether in the sense of the committee, they would want to still have a public hearing with the IGP on matters of national security and all of that.
Okay.
At the end of the day, I say that, look, it's about what we as the public feel and see about the leadership of this IGP. The police is there to serve the public, and therefore it is our appreciation of how the public feel about the leadership of an IGP that matters, and not somebody who has that parochial interest of wanting to become an IGP and just thinks that the way to go about it is to play politics and to be so partisan in a needless way as we are witnessing. So, well, so far it's good, and let's see how things will pan out.
Okay. Now, smallholder farmers benefit from $69.7 million project. Now, the Ministry of Finance has launched a $69.7 million affordable agricultural financing for resilient rural development, AFFORD, a project in Sunyani to benefit over 540,000 smallholder farmers in 6 regions. The beneficial regions are Bono East and Ahafo in the Middle Belt, and the Northern, Savannah and Northeast regions in the Northern Belt, funded by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. The project is expected to provide direct services to about 75,000 rural households and indirectly to about 465,000 individuals in smallholder households. The project is specifically designed to provide financing to small-scale and large-scale farmers, farmer-based organizations, as well as micro, small, and medium enterprises engaged in agriculture-related businesses. The goal of the project is to support food security and improve living standards of smallholder farmers, poor and vulnerable women and youth in the regions. Launching the AFFORD project, the Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, said the agricultural sector accounted for 54% of the country's gross domestic product. He explained that the sector contributed 40% of Ghana's export earnings while providing over 90% of the food needs of the country. He said a source from the third Ghana Economic Update 2020 by the World Bank showed that around 71% of the formal employment in rural areas was in the farming sector, indicating the importance of increasing agrarian incomes as a means of lowering rural poverty. So here we are, some $69.7 million coming. If I'm sure you have an eye on the agricultural sector, probably you have a farm somewhere. What do you think government should, or how should government manage the 69.7 million to ensure that at the end of the day, the benefit that is intended will be achieved?
So this is support from IFAD.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that it would have been a program that is well designed with, clear objectives and stated goals, intended outcomes, intended impacts would all be captured on paper in a very, very brilliant way. There's no doubt that our governments and policymakers in the public sector are really, you have great minds there. So in terms of design of policies like these, if you were to pick the policy document, you would really appreciate the level of smartness, the level of brilliance that has gone into a document like that. The unfortunate thing is the whole issue about implementation and how people cut corners in order to make money. Over the years, we've had planting for food and jobs, a policy that on paper will look so great and so brilliant. But what has happened? Schools are still being shut because they cannot get food. Prices of food have been, skyrocketing. We continue to import tomatoes and onions from, the Sahelian region, countries that do not have the kind of lands that we have. So, because of previous records and how we've implemented past policies, even though some of these things should give one hope, you remain quite skeptical and doubtful. This is about almost $70 million, a very, very significant amount of money. But at the end of the day, you end up not seeing any changes because monies will go into people's pockets. People would, accumulate wealth from it for their political agenda and all of that. Planting for food and jobs. What happened? The result is that the minister in charge, who was supposed to make it work and rather presided over failure, today is gallivanting all over saying that he wants to become president and talking about what agri can do for our country and so on. And the people, who are in the farming sector continue to suffer, who are in the agri sector continue to suffer. Because I'm in the media, I will continue to say that, look, we journalists have a lot of work to do. We've seen the announcements of these policies. Let's make it a point to track it. Let's make it a point to follow it. Right from the beginning, let's continue to ask questions and see how things will go. Until we do that, my brother, I think it will be business as usual. People will just make money and peanuts will go to these beneficiaries, and at the end of the day, nothing will change.
Okay. Let's shift our attention to the Daily Guide newspaper. It says, student fetish priest killed by fire. Zongo Inner City's health outreach launched. Mahama attacks Nana. Judges. Your prayers gave me victory. I need more. That's according to Dr. Baumia. Alan speaks tomorrow. Now let's start from page 3. It says, ex-president John Dramani Mahama has resurrected his venomous attacks on the judiciary, branding judges appointed during the Akufo-Addo administration as cronies and MPP inclined. Speaking at the 3rd annual lawyers conference of the National Democratic Congress on Saturday, Mr. Mahama, who is running for the presidency again, said the NPP government has deliberately put its people on the bench. According to him, President Nana Akufo-Addo has packed the court with the view to avoid accountability upon leaving office, noting that the president has appointed the biggest number of judges onto the bench. Quote, it is more than 80 towards 100 and counting. You can see what the current president has done. He has packed the court, and we know they have packed the court because they want to avoid accountability after they have left office, he stressed. Your thought on this?
This is coming from a former president and somebody who is seeking to be president again. If those are the facts in terms of appointments to the judiciary, then certainly it is a matter that must be raised. However, if they are not factual, then it is a matter of concern. Because, look, our judiciary, how solid it is, has a very significant implication for the consolidation and development of our democracy. To be honest with you, the reality and the truth is that a lot of people are losing confidence in the judiciary. And that is why when Justice Gertrude Tokonu was appointed as the Chief Justice, knowing her background and the kinds of things that people have said about her, I did a piece congratulating her and urging her to do the kinds of things that will restore public confidence in the judiciary. As I said, the truth is that people believe that our judiciary, to some extent, is not being fair, to some extent, has been partisan to some extent, serves the interest of the rich in our society. We have an opportunity to amend that. And one of the ways to amend that is for me to say things as it is. Some of us, you would say it, and sometimes, oh, it's contempt, oh, it's this. But we don't build society with threats. I don't think that the respect that people have for our judiciary is because the judiciary has the power to commit. I think it is because the judiciary is the institution of justice. That is why people, would have the respect for our judiciary. We've seen the appointment of a former MPP aspirant in the Volta region onto the Supreme Court. That is a fact. And nobody can say that or can convince me that such a person on the court really does not compromise the kind of opinion that people will have for the court. Unfortunately, our parliament, after a brief controversy here and there, approved him, and he is on the bench now. And so I think we don't have to say that when things are too partisan, too polarizing and all, they shouldn't be said. I think we can only confront the issues when they are brought to the limelight. And as I said, if the evidence points to the fact that Nana Akufo-Addo has been appointing persons who are obviously inclined to the MPP onto the bench, it has to be said. Just as, for example, he's done with the appointment of persons who are very well-known partisan activists of the MPP onto the Electoral Commission. I mean, if we say that that really compromises the integrity and the independence of the Electoral Commission, that is the fact, and nobody can deny that. And so for me, it's not just about condemning the former president, it's maybe about looking into the evidence. And if the evidence clearly points to support what he's saying, then we have to discuss it and bring it to the limelight, rather than saying, oh, it's a very dicey matter, you don't have to say that, you don't have to say this. I don't think that is how to build a society.
Okay. Now, what about when he says, quote, we must be prepared as NDC legal persons to also go onto the bench so that we can balance out the judiciary. Is that the way to go?
No, that absolutely is not the way to go. We don't want an MPP, NDC judiciary in this country. We want a judiciary that is based on rule of law. We want a judiciary that is based on a true, fair interpretation of our laws and our constitution. So I don't think that even if Nana Akufo-Addo indeed has appointed close to 100 or even 500 judges onto the bench, I don't think the way to go is to say that, look, let us also appoint NDC inclined judges onto the bench. People would say, but how else do you do it? I think we have to hold those judges who are there now accountable and expose those who think that they would use their position to serve the interest of their political parties. And I believe that there could be a way of doing that. Yes, they are the judges. They sit there, we call them our lords. We call them our lords not because they are MPP judges. We call them our lords because they are judges of our courts. And so certainly there should be a way of calling them out and naming and shaming folks who think that they want to use the judiciary for their parochial partisan interest. Just as COP Alex Mensah thought that he could use his inclinations to the MPP to seek to become the IGP or to undermine the current IGP. I believe that those who would think that they would want to act on the basis of their partisan interest would eventually be exposed, and that is the way to go. And if President Mahama were to become president again, I think he will have the power to ensure that certain amendments are done. Why? Judges can be sacked, and so on.
Okay. Now, let's do the final now in wrapping up. Now, the National Identification Authority, NIA, has truncated the 10-day special exercise initiated to exclusively register public sector workers and issue them Ghana card free of charge. Now, consequently, the ongoing exercise has been open to all Ghanaians aged 15 years and above without Ghana card from today. This is the result of highly disappointing patronage of the exercise, which is meant to ensure that every public sector worker has Ghana card before the Comptroller and Accountant General kickstarts no Ghana card, no salary policy later in the year. The low patronage is surprising considering the high publicity about the exercise and the fact that it was being done at the request of the Controller and Accountant General Department and at no cost to first-time applicant. We are told that, I mean, when this exercise was opened, where they were able to only register some 87 public sector workers in 5 days, and that's why they've now opened it to everybody. How do we deal with this Ghanaian attitude of not going for the thing when the time has come, but we'll wait for last day and then we start rushing? How do we deal with it to ensure that more people are registering for the Ghana card now?
Well, two things. Yes, we have to deal with the attitude of the Ghanaian, who is always last minute. We have that attitude of doing things last minute. It's something that we have to work on as an attitudinal thing, as a cultural thing, as a values thing. That's real. The other thing that we have to deal with is the elitism of our institutions. The people who really needs the Ghana card are the folks in Daboya, Mankarago, who could not register because of resource constraints, and they couldn't move at some point. The ones who have to, who need it the most are the men and women in Nyamibechere, in Ahafwano Southwest, who could not register because at the time that the folks were there, the NIA folks were there, maybe they had to do like 3 kilometers to a certain community to be able to get it. What is important for the NIA is to make the services available to these people by moving to the rural areas, so that our things, I mean, in terms of these digital public infrastructure stuff that we are rolling out, it becomes more inclusive, rather than always giving the privilege and the opportunity to those of us in the cities and who can actually afford. Even if the thing is being done in Dodowa and the public sector worker here in Accra has to get it, the person has the opportunity to either board a vehicle or get on a motorbike to go and get it. And so I think for me, what is important is how do we make these things very inclusive, so that those who need it the most in the rural areas, in the very deprived areas, will be able to get it, rather than lamenting over an elitist implementation of a policy because people are not patronizing. For me, those who need it the most are the ones that we must prioritize.
All right. Now, on page 8, it says Ghana poised to tap into $34.1 billion global salt industry. That's according to Samuel Abdullahi, Jenapor, Minister for Land and Natural Resources. Now, he says, okay, so he's optimistic that Ghana is poised to tap into the multi-billion-dollar salt industry following the commissioning of Electrochem salt mine and processing plant. Industry experts project that the size of the global salt market will grow from 34.1 billion in 2023 to 48.6 billion by 2030. Speaking at the official commissioning of the Electrochem salt mine and processing plant in Adan, Jenapor said Ghana is now poised to export salt to Nigeria and other countries. He disclosed that, quote, after several engagements with relevant stakeholders and the payment of compensation to qualified applicant, Electrochem Ghana Limited has been granted a 15-year mineral lease for the commercial production of salt. Now, we know, the sort of acrimony that has greeted this Electrochem adventure. Now, all is set for the company to start exportation of salt. What would be your word of advice to the company and to government as to how they can maximize the gains from the salt exploration?
First of all, I think as a country, we've historically been mining gold, for example, and I believe that over the years, the past decades, the amount of money we've, as a country, should have earned from our gold resources is perhaps trillions, not the billions that they are talking about. But we are still where we are as a country. People are living in poverty, especially in communities where these resources have been exploited over the years.
Yeah.
We know about the Adan Songo salt project and the devastation it is causing for local people in the Adan area. We know how people have been brutalized, how women have been whipped, by state security officials. We know how journalists who have spoken about the welfare and well-being of the community people have been attacked. We know the extent to which some media houses have literally been censored not to cover the Ada issues. What for me is important is not how much we are going to earn, whether it's billions or trillions, because we've seen that in gold, we've seen that in manganese, we've seen that in cocoa over the years. What is important is the people who are, whose resources are being tapped. What is the benefit to them? We've had gold mines, Obuasi, in Takwa, in Kenyase, and so on and so forth. What has changed in the lives of the people who live in these areas? What is going to change in the lives of the people of Ada? I think that for me is a very fundamental question. It is not about the trillions and billions we are going to make. Like I said, we've made that over the years, but where has it put us? It has just been about people amassing wealth, politicians amassing billions and billions and keeping some in the houses because they cannot even take it to the banks. We know about all that. So again, as a nation, we need to get involved in these issues, to be on the side of the people who are being marginalized, to be on the side of people who are being deprived, to be on the side of the people whose rights are being violated. So that at the end of the day, it is not the interest of politicians, but the interest of the people that should matter to all.
All right. Thank you so much, Suleiman Abrahima, for joining us here on the News Review. All right, so he is the Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa. And this segment was brought to us by End Point Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic diseases. Well, we'll take a quick break. When we return, we'll bring you sports. Muftau Abdullahi is coming up next with latest from the world of sports. Do stay.